Hey, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for being with us, John. We're so excited that you're here.
Oh,
My name
thank
is
you very much.
my name is Bernadette, and this is my nephew Kai. He's one of the founders of Farmbrook Free Press.
Oh,
There's a
fantastic.
few others, and he is a big fan of yours, and he has a lot of questions for you.
Oh,
So,
very
a little
good.
intro. We have with us today Mr. John D. Ruddy. John, who has become an internet sensation because of his videos covering different historical topics in an incredibly interesting way, is just so cool. He is also an actor and has starred in such plays as The Rising by Joe O'Brien, The 39 Steps, and his own play, History of Ireland on Stage, an adaptation of his Manny Man cartoon strip videos. He's also an artist with his Manny Man cartoon strips, earning him a myriad of praises, and we're just so happy to have you with us today.
Wow.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful introduction. I am thoroughly impressed. Thank you very much.
As I said, it's a huge honor to meet you, and I've watched literally every single one of your videos. And as a history buff myself, they're captivating. My first question would be, when you started publishing your videos and you started with your Manny Man cartoon strips, did you ever guess that it would be such a big success?
No, never did. And like a lot of YouTubers, I think the success is always kind of accidental. And you try different ideas, you try different things and see what works. And the Manny Man Does History thing was what worked, because I've been drawing Manny Man since I was about 14 years old.
Oh,
Using
wow.
him to, he's always been at the corner of my pages and my copybooks at school. And when I was in high school studying Shakespeare, I used him to create a comic book version of King Lear so I could visualize the story better. Because I wanted a comic book version, but I couldn't find one that was good. So I was like, I'm just going to make my own. And so he was always kind of with me. So when I started doing YouTube videos, Manny Man became this vehicle. I was like, well, I can use Manny Man. He's my character. He's quick and easy to draw. And I was working as an elementary school teacher at the time. So I was, or at least as a substitute, I was going from school to school, spreading the joy of education. And now I'm doing it on a global stage. So I was in classrooms talking about history and actually rediscovering my love of history while I was in there. So I really wanted to tell that story. And that's one thing that I love about history, is how one thing leads to the next, leads to the next. It's a thread that I tend to pull on quite a bit, particularly with Irish history, because quite often we'll learn about things in isolation, and just learn about this battle or just learn about this war. But once you look at it with the big picture, you realize it's all connected. I remember I was driving, I was giving a ride to they were brass players of the Cairo Opera Orchestra who were in my hometown for a concert, and I played the trumpet as well, and they were looking to get some repairs for their instruments, and there was only one place in the country that did it, and we were driving through Northern Ireland to get there. I live very close to the border with Northern Ireland. I live in the Republic, but just over the road. And what did we do? We were driving through Northern Ireland, and they saw a lot of British flags flying around. And so they asked, so why is Northern Ireland part of the United Kingdom? And I says, well, do you want the short answer, the medium answer, or the long answer? And they were like, what's the difference? Well, the short answer starts in the 1900s, the medium answer starts in the 1600s, and the long answer starts in the 1170s. So take your pick.
What did they
choose?
They went for the medium answer.
That's so funny.
It was like, so the Ulster Plantation.
Wow. So you play the trumpet, you said?
I do, yes. I've been, cool. Funnily enough, I've been playing trumpet probably for the same amount of time as I've been drawing Manny Man. So
I love that, Manny Man. It's kind of like Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney.
Well, yeah. I mean, the
No?
funny thing was, like,
Yeah.
it's the name, come up with by a 14-year-old.
Yeah, Manny
What am I
Man.
going to call this character? Money Man,
And
and it
it
just
just appeared in
stuck.
your head. It just
Yeah, it
appeared in
just
your
appeared in
head.
my head. Although my mum had a theory
Yes,
that
what?
when she when I was a baby, and she didn't realize this until she was then taking care of my baby nephews, where she was like cuddling up with them. She said, "Oh, my wee manny man," and then
Isn't
she didn't
that
realize.
crazy?
Wait a minute, did John get this like
Oh my
subliminally as a
gosh. Isn't
baby?
that
So it's
crazy?
possible. It's possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Go ahead, Kai.
So Ireland has had sort of a tumultuous history, especially in the last century, with the Troubles and the War of Independence, and it's really an amazing history. What brought you to history as an interest, and how long have you been interested in history?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. So I've gone back and forth with my love of history, like, as you know, when I was your age and I was learning about history in school, it was very much like, you know, the ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, Vikings, Aztecs, all of these different civilizations that really captured my attention. I was fascinated with, you know, the different clothes and the different society structures and the different mythologies that went with them, and I thought that was really cool. And then history started to get full of politics and paintings and black and white photos, and it kind of died for me a little bit. I just remember, like, I still can see the page for the Easter Rising in my history book. And I wasn't much of a reader, so like I wouldn't have kind of taken the time to read ahead in the book. But I always flicked through and looked at the pictures. I'm a very visual thinker. But always trying to just kind of work out what it is. And it's like, what is, and what does it mean by the Easter Rising? Like, did they, you know, what did they do at Easter and why did they rise? But yeah, I just, it never really got with me. And then in secondary school, I had one substitute teacher, I get an inspirational substitute teacher who told the story of World War II. And really explained it as a story, not as, you know, so in September 1939. You know, it was, you know, he told it as a story. He told it with characters, you know, like telling it the way that you would present maybe like a film or something, where you've got your key players. And so that was something that I took with me whenever I finally eventually started learning or started teaching history. Because when I went to university, it was I studied education, and as well as that, you studied another academic subject, and I studied English literature. I didn't even study history then, although they are very parallel, because of course all of the literature has its historical contexts. But it was just something I always found myself kind of leaning into a little bit. But there are so many people who can make history super boring.
Yes,
and it's one of my frustrations.
I feel like all my history teachers made it super boring.
Oh my God.
But John, I do have a friend who is a historian now, and she talks like it's happening in the backyard. Yeah. And like it's like gossip, and it makes it like come alive. And I never have experienced that until I met her.
And that's the thing that I constantly kind of try to remind people about history, is that it's all just people making decisions the way that we make decisions. You know, it may be a slightly different setting, but it is people. Like, they're not these kind of grand figure, you know, fictional characters. You know, we've a tendency of, they've almost become these kind of deities, but it's like they were real people. Like one figure I find just fascinating, for the amount of contradictions in his life, was Thomas Jefferson, for example, who I just, you know, like some of the things that he's written about human rights, about, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created equal, and yet he owns like 600 people.
I know, you know, it's crazy.
All of these, you know, and he wrote about, look, I know that slavery is this evil that we have and that we're so reliant and dependent on, and yet he continued to own these people. But like some ways, and I've made this comparison in one of my videos, where sometimes I see like that addiction, you know, that economic addiction to owning people, where it's kind of similar to where we are at a point now, say with like fossil fuels, except obviously enslaved people were people and fossil fuels are an inanimate object, but like that same kind of thing of, but our economy is entirely wrapped around this one thing, and if we were to remove it, then we would have to completely change the way we live. Yeah, we do. We do need to change the way we live.
We do. That's why I got Tesla.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tesla is like, hey, let's change the world. Thomas Edison is like, hey, no, let's make money from it.
Yeah, true. Go ahead, Kai.
So out of curiosity, I know, as I mentioned earlier, you are an actor. You've toured Ireland with different plays on stage. And your latest one, I think that's the latest one, was History of Ireland on Stage. It was your play. Yes. You wrote it. And it was adapted from your Manny Man cartoon. So what was the process and what was that transition like of going from the videos to doing this on stage in front of a live audience?
It was a really fascinating transition, because first of all, because it's an adaptation of the book of the video. Like, so when I came to write the book based on the video, it was essentially just a case of expanding it. You know, the video was about 2,000 words, and then the book was about 20,000 words. So it was a case of, oh, cool, now I can go into details. And but when it came to putting it on stage, I'm like, well, it can't just be me up there going, first of all, in the Stone Age, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this, you know, you'll exhaust your audience. So I was sitting there going, right, how do I present this? How do I do this? And then at the same time, I also wanted, I had two goals. I wanted it to be educational, that if you know, didn't know anything about Irish history, that you could pick something up. If you did know something about Irish history, then you'd be like, this is so cool. But also, if you didn't know anything about it, then it was still entertaining to watch, even if you weren't interested in history. And so I ended up with developing these two characters who I gave the name Sin and Oppie. And that comes very simply from Sin being the cynic and Oppie being the optimist.
I love it.
And they were always, whenever I'm making my Manny Man videos, occasionally there'll be two little Manny Men in the corner and one of them will be like, oh wow, this is so cool. And the other one's like, oh God, why do you have to say it like that? So these characters were always there kind of in the background. And I realized these characters are actually the vehicle that I can tell a story. And I had worked very closely with a good friend of mine, Louise Conahan, the funniest person I know. She is hilarious. Wow. And I have acted in many, many plays with her before. And so when I wrote it with her in mind. And there was one time in particular, we were doing a play, and she had gotten a very bad flu just before, in the final week of rehearsals. So we had missed a lot of key rehearsing time. And whenever we came to opening night, there were a couple of moments, let's just say, where the lines weren't 100%. And there were a couple of, like, because it was a very technical play where we were playing multiple characters. So we would walk across the stage and we would be in a different place, a different scene, and as different people. And there were a couple of times where she caught me and she was just like, you could just see in her eyes,
oh no,
where we are.
Oh no.
And so I was thinking, this would actually be quite funny to write into a play.
Yeah.
And so
actually, that's smart.
And also it gave her license that if ever she made a mistake with the history, because she wouldn't be I would be a very stickler for details with history. Right. If she were to come out with, you know, the slightly wrong thing, that it would totally be in my character to correct her on the stage.
I love it. That's a good idea. Did you ever get nervous on stage?
Funnily enough, I usually no. Like, I mean, there's always a good amount of kind of good nerves, you know. Right. It always reminds me, standing at the side of the stage just before a show is like waiting to get on a roller coaster.
Oh my God, I would hate
where you're just standing there, you're kind of breathing, and you hear the "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the theater." Before we get, you know, the safety announcement, I'm like, oh, there's no going back now. And because and most of the plays that I do, I'm usually on stage for the whole play, you know.
Wow.
And so it's like, when I step out here, I can't get off the roller coaster, you know. Once I start, it's like, before I step on, I have the option. I mean, I'm not going to, but I have the option, if I really want to, I can run out the door and never go on. But once you step on, you're in there, you're strapped in for 90 minutes of theater, off we go. And it can become a real out-of-body experience sometimes, where you're in the middle of it, and sometimes you're just in the zone where you're just, you know, going through the scenes, and occasionally you're like, oh wow, we're halfway through the play already. But you know, you can't stop to think. It's really cool. But when I did, when I remembered the earlier in the day of doing Manny Man Does the History of Ireland on stage, and I realized, I got super nervous, because I realized I have written this. If this doesn't work, I can't like blame the writer. Like, you know, there have been plays on occasion in the past where you go in and you do it, and you come out afterwards, and people are like, I mean, you were good in it, but I just didn't get it. I was like, yeah. And sometimes the writing can be better. But in this, I was like, oh no, if this doesn't work, then it's on me. I wrote this. And I realized, like, all of these jokes, are people going to laugh at these jokes?
So vulnerable. It's like very vulnerable.
Yeah, it was really
John,
vulnerable.
I got a question. How old were you when you did your first play?
I was, well, I've been performing since I was probably about 6 or 7. Not as a central thing, but my mother, Kathleen Ruddy, she ran a theater group, a youth theater group called the Rainbow Theater Group. So cool. And I'm the youngest of 2 sisters, and so my 2 sisters, they were always kind of the bigger personalities who would take to the stage and get to sing all the songs, and I was just that little bit younger, but I was always watching it, and I was always taking it in, and I remember we did. It was like a variety show, so it was loads of different songs from different films and stuff, and we did This Is Halloween from Nightmare Before Christmas, and I remember I had the line, I am the one hiding under your stairs, fingers like snakes and spiders in my hair. But yeah, so I've been performing at the side of that, but then when I went to university, I joined the Drama Society, and I got cast as the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, and so ever since then I was
oh my God, that sounds so good.
It was a lot of fun.
But when
and ever since then I caught the bug. Sorry, what was that?
When did you write your first play and performed? How old were you?
Manny Man Does the History of Ireland was actually my first play. I was, that's a good question. That was 20, we released it in 2018 first, and I wrote it in 2017, so I was 28 when I wrote it.
Amazing. So cool.
I'm just curious, obviously you're very passionate about like drama and stuff on the stage, and you're obviously very passionate about history. What was the feeling of mixing that together, as well as you were mentioning jokes, and my favorite funny scene was actually, I think it was you were singing and she was dancing, and it just, you were able to make it in that trademark Manny Man way where it is so much fun. What was the feeling like of mixing all that together?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was really, really good. My favorite thing to hear whenever we finally did get it in front of the stage, like whenever you're rehearsing a play, and I always say this, even if I'm acting or if I'm directing, the last ingredient to your show is the audience, you know, and they are that final thing. And hearing the audience react and interact with the play, my favorite thing to hear was you would have kids laughing at some bits and you would have adults laughing at other bits, and then you'd have everybody laughing at other bits again. So like I was really pleased that I was able to reach such a wide audience. Like I kind of compared it a little bit to like Shrek, you know, in the way of there's something in there for everybody. Right. But it was wonderful to be able to, because obviously those, you know, that kind of visual humor of, you know, dancing and combining that and music is something that I don't get to do as much in my video format. So it was wonderful to be able to do that kind of humor, and to bring to life, because quite often there'll be these, you know, still images. Like a lot of the jokes that ended up, you know, in the play originated as you know, written word in the comic strips, you know, where the two characters are talking to each other. So that was really cool to be able to actually finally have those words spoken out loud, and to have, you know, people laugh with it, because it's always something that I try to do very carefully is, you know, is the tone of things, of, you know, what do you joke about and what do you not joke about? Right. For example, in Ireland, generally, you know, you don't want to joke about the famine. It's still a very touchy subject, and rightly so. It's a deeply, deeply sad point in history. But it's actually one of my favorite parts of the play. because it's so sad. Like I'm in tears whenever I'm performing it, and you know, and we go through, because the way that we bring the audience into it is two completely different styles of acting, where I am playing it deadly serious and Oppie is kind of playing it like, and the way she delivers the lines, it's like a school play. And she's like, you know, I'm like, what's that smell? It's coming from the fields. And we can't eat these potatoes. Oh no, what? Well, we can't just starve, can we? Can we? And then it just gets super dark, and we both kind of just curl up, and the audience is just like, oh, this is dark. And then it just goes on, and I'm, you know, I then explain how, you know, the population of Ireland in 1845 was 8 million, and by 1890s it was 4 million. Like I'm feeling tears. It's so sad. Crazy. But the interesting thing is, where the audience is, you can sense from the audience going, how are we going to get out of this nosedive of sadness? this was funny. What's going on here? And then we start talking about the Irish language, and how by the 1890s there were more Irish speakers living in America than there were living in Ireland. The Irish language was literally being beaten out of the children in the English-run schools. And then Oppie comes in behind me, and now it's being beaten back into them, and everybody laughs. And off we go.
No, what is science? Like a real science.
Yeah, it is quite fascinating.
Amazing.
Curiosity, do you speak Gaelic? Like, do you speak?
I do speak, yes. Ta Gaeilge agam, níl mé lífa ach ta mé, as I say, cúpla focal agam, that I just said, yes, I speak Irish. I'm not fluent, but I have a few words. But I did study Irish because technically I'm qualified to teach it to children. Okay. So cool. I would hope that I have some, but yes, indeed. Here's one for you. You're living in New York, yes?
Yes, I'm in New York, and he's in Michigan.
So, oh, very nice. Yeah. So New York is in Irish is New York.
Okay.
New York is I live in New York. So there you go.
So John, I live in an area called Hell's Kitchen, and it was a lot of Irish gangsters back in the day.
Yes.
And they were.
I know Hell's Kitchen from Daredevil. I'm a huge Marvel fan.
Oh yes, exactly. They're here. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
so amazing.
The devil of Hell's Kitchen. I love it.
Yeah. Devil Tells Good. Go ahead, Kai.
Is there one of your videos that is like your all-time masterpiece in your mind that's like, this is my favorite one of my videos? You know what I mean?
I was asked this the last day too, and I'm still trying to think. I do feel most of my videos are getting better. I'm more and more happy with my videos. Like, I do watch some of my earlier videos, and a lot of artists, a lot of creative people do this, where they look at their earlier work and go, oh God, what was I thinking?
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, you don't get to where you are today without making those decisions and learning from those experiences. But I am very proud of my most recent video about the presidents of the United States. It's been my longest video. It's nearly an hour long, and it was a lot of work. Although it was a lot of recycled. It was a lot of recycled content from previous videos that I did 4 years ago. But I was able to add more to it, recontextualize things, and add a little section about the 45th president and the 46th, actually, and the 46th. Just a little bit going, and now it's Joe Biden. Yeah, I'm very, very pleased with that. I'm very pleased with the series that I've started about the monarchs of England. I'm quite enjoying that. My video about the Stonewall riots, I'm very pleased with. So there's a lot of ones, and then of course the work that I've done on Irish history. I've been really proud, because where I think, you know, with American history, there's a lot of content out there about American history, whereas with Irish history, there's not as many people making stuff about Irish history. So I'm very proud that I'm able to bring Irish history to a broader audience, and you know, that people can see it and understand it, and to be able to go, oh, here's a video called the Irish War of Independence in 12 minutes. Cool, that's only going to be 12 minutes, and I'll have a better understanding. So
I love that. So cool.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I know a family who they've showed me pictures of this castle, like this old family home, and they've got this amazing history of a guy who led a rebellion in the 1500s against the English and was exiled, and it's just the coolest story. Do you have a family history like that? Do you have a family history in Ireland?
Well, I mean, it's funny. My wife is Canadian, and so we often have really interesting kind of conversations about, you know, lineage and about, you know, who our family was, because, you know, I think a lot of North Americans have a very different perspective of, you know, who you're descended from, because here in Ireland, most people are descended from, you know, we've always been here, at least, you know, the people have been living here for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, and so we're descended from them, with maybe a bit of Viking and a little bit of, you know, a bit of English in there, and a little, you know, but for the most part, you know, you can tell with surnames where you've got like some Norman surnames like Fitzwilliam or Fitzpatrick or Costello or different things like that. They're the Norman names, so they came over in like the 12th or 13th century, and then but me personally, I have, well, it's interesting actually, because it's you'll often get a lot of people where they're like, oh, my grandfather fought in the GPO beside Patrick Pearse in the Easter Rising, or, you know, they'll be very proud of their things. Whereas one of my great grandfathers was actually in the RIC, which was the British police force in Ireland during the Irish War of Independence.
Oh, wow.
He was stationed in Belfast, and he was from Donegal, which is in the northwest. Belfast is in the northeast. And when he returned home to Donegal, he was not welcome back in his hometown. So he moved to a different corner of Donegal. And so, yeah, although interestingly enough, for kind of North American connections, one of my one of my like third or fourth cousins. So like my great auntie moved to America back in like the 1900s, and so her family got in touch with my family about nearly 10 years ago now, and it was amazing because their grandmother came over and met my grandmother, and my grandmother had a photograph of this lady Shirley as a baby that her uncle sent over, you know, so there's all these connections. But one of those we discovered was actually the registrar of copyrights of the United States, and so she was the last name in, like, you know, up until the start of the 45th presidency. She was the registrar of copyrights all the way through Obama's presidency.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was really cool. And so she she came over and she was visiting Ireland, and she was like, well, if you're ever in DC, come on over. I was like, when am I ever going to be in DC? A year and a half later, I ended up being in DC, and I was there for Thanksgiving. And yeah, and so it was wonderful. And she was able to show me around the Library of Congress and all of that. So
cool.
Wonderful.
It's such a North American fantasy, though, of people tracing back their roots.
Yeah.
And I never thought of it from like a European standpoint of, yeah, well, we've been here forever.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
I love to hear from people who are interested in history on sort of modern topics, because obviously you know a lot about what happened previously in Ireland. Do you see some of the actions and things that are happening between Northern and Southern Ireland as a good sign for possible further reconciliation and even maybe reunification eventually?
Yeah, I think I would be very much of an idea. I think because of Brexit, Irish reunification is probably inevitable sooner rather than later. I would think before Brexit, before the Brexit referendum, I wasn't necessarily in support of a united Ireland, pretty much because the situation that was there maintained a really good solid status quo. With the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, people who considered themselves Irish were Irish, and and even if they lived in Northern Ireland, they could get an Irish passport, or they could get a British passport if they want, or they could get both if they really wanted to. And funnily enough, once Brexit was voted in, you had a lot of people who considered themselves British who were in Northern Ireland all of a sudden getting Irish passports just in case, to keep a European Union passport. But I do think, looking back at history, there's a lot that we can learn from with regards what some of the possibilities that could happen. I would imagine if a united Ireland does happen, that we need to look at what happened in Northern Ireland 100 years ago, whenever Northern Ireland was created. And there was this real sense of, Protestant superiority of, this is our country, this, the phrase "a Protestant state for a Protestant people." And so Catholics were second-class citizens, and they were ignored, and they were, tread upon. And if Northern Ireland becomes part of the Republic of Ireland, then a lot of those, what we call unionists, proud to be British, they will then be in the minority, and they will be of 400 years of proud Britishness from their perspective. And that's, I don't think, to be mocked. And there would be a lot of people who would be tempted to go, you're not British anymore, you're Irish, come on. But I think they need to be treated with respect. I think they needed to be treated delicately, because in honesty as well, there are some people on both sides who would spark violence if given the opportunity. But I would say, looking at what happened, say in Dublin, for example, 100 years ago, there was a lot of unionist support in Dublin, like the south side of Dublin. We have a nickname for some people in Dublin, and it's called West Brits, where there's a lot of people, particularly in South Dublin, who are more English than Irish in some sensibilities. And there would probably still be some kind of people who would quietly, not publicly, kind of think, would we not be better off still in the United Kingdom? but they don't go there for obvious reasons. But a lot of those people, a lot of those unionists 100 years ago who were living in Dublin and realizing the ship has sailed, we are no longer part of the United Kingdom, let's get on with it, and so they joined political parties in Ireland and began getting involved in Irish politics. I think that the kind of change in demographics with Northern Ireland joining the Republic could actually really shift Irish politics in a positive way, because what's happened in the South is that we've got two main political parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and they're both like kind of center right. One's a little bit more center right than the other, but like they're two sides of the same coin. They both stemmed from the same political party in the Civil War in the 1920s, and they pretend they're completely different, but they're
the same.
They're the same.
Familiar.
And yeah, exactly. I know, right? Whereas in Northern Ireland, there's a lot more identity politics. It's all about, unionist or Republican, and that's Irish Republican, very different to American Republican, nationalist, Irish nationalist, and but as well as that, there are also kind of like labor movements and social democratic movements, but Northern Ireland is still very much hung up on identity politics.
Right.
But if there is a United Ireland, it's possible that all of these unionists who are no longer, their chief identity is being in the union with the United Kingdom, and they have a tendency of being quite conservative in their politics. And there's a lot of folks in Southern politics who would also have quite conservative views too, and they could find kind of strange bedfellows and a complete kind of realignment of Irish politics,
like a middle ground that ties them all together.
Exactly. And so what could hopefully end up happening is that we have a proper right and a proper left in our politics, so that we can actually vote for the people who will do what we want, as opposed to, we're gonna do stuff. Don't ask us the details, but we're gonna do stuff.
Don't ask us the details.
Yeah.
John, go ahead, Kai.
I just want to ask, what is your advice that you would give to someone that's enthusiastic about art and history and what would you advise someone that is interested and would like to pursue a career in things around those fields?
I suppose it sounds kind of corny, but be yourself. And what does that mean with regards to history? Bring yourself to history, because this goes for anything in life. The only difference between you and everybody else is you. You are you. And again, it sounds corny, but
that's beautiful.
Your own unique perspective could be the difference in being able to communicate something effectively. So bring yourself to the history. So whenever you're communicating it, be a good communicator, particularly with history, because as I said, it so easily becomes boring. Sometimes I'm reading about things that I've never discovered before, or maybe that I have learned about before and just forgot it because it was so boring, that I'm just reading it in frustration going, how did they make this boring? This is amazing.
Right. It's fascinating.
And I think that's a cornerstone of the theme of Manny Man, and the message of Manny Man is you are giving such a cool and fun way for people to, especially in the United States and in other countries, who wouldn't really have any connection to Irish history otherwise, and they just get fascinated by it. And you're really, Manny Man gives them that fascination, and that's such a cool thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of that.
So cool.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. You're amazing, and I really enjoy your work a great deal. You're like my hero.
Oh, thank you so
for our
much.
viewers,
Kate, that was an absolutely fantastic interview. I'm thoroughly impressed. You have a great career ahead of you if you keep this up.
It's exciting.
Thank you for our viewers, be sure to go check out John's YouTube, which is John D. Ruddy, as well as his TikTok, where you've been posting daily little what happened that day in history. So that's John D. Ruddy, correct? At John D. Ruddy, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll if you just look up John D. Ruddy, you'll find me on all the platforms. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well.
It was an honor. Seriously, you're so great.
Oh, thank you so much.
And for any viewers, be sure to follow us at Farmbrook Free Press Official on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe and like us.
Hit the bell icon for all the notifications.
Thank you so much, John. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Right.
Manny Man does history.